Sometimes in the NFL, the game you lose isn't played on Sunday. It's played in the transaction wire, in the waiver claims, in those seemingly minor roster moves that front offices make thinking nobody's watching. And for the Chicago Bears, one of those moves just cost us a player we've been quietly developing, a young linebacker who caught the attention of a championship-contending team, and a piece that could have been part of our future. Welcome to Bears News Fan Report, your home for the most comprehensive coverage, breaking updates, and insider analysis of our beloved Chicago Bears. I'm here today with a development that's been unfolding behind the scenes, a roster decision that backfired in ways the organization didn't anticipate, and a lesson about the cutthroat nature of NFL roster management that every Bears fan needs to understand. Stay with me, because what I'm about to break down involves strategic miscalculation, missed opportunities, and what this means for our linebacker depth moving forward. Let me paint the picture of how we got here. The Bears have been in a constant state of roster flux this season, which isn't unusual for a team trying to balance immediate competitiveness with long-term development. We're sitting at 9-4 in the thick of the playoff race, and every roster spot matters. Every decision about who dresses on game day, who sits on the practice squad, and who gets waived carries weight. The coaching staff and front office have been juggling these decisions week after week, trying to optimize the 53-man roster based on matchups, injuries, and immediate needs. One of the players caught in this roster shuffle has been Carl Jones Jr., an undrafted free agent linebacker who joined the Bears in 2024. Now, UDFA players are always fighting an uphill battle. They don't have the draft pedigree, they don't have guaranteed contracts, and they're constantly proving themselves just to stay on a roster. But Jones showed enough in training camp and preseason to make the Bears believe he could be a developmental piece worth keeping around. The organization clearly saw something in him, some combination of athleticism, football IQ, or special teams ability that made them want to invest time in his growth. Here's where the story gets interesting, and this is where the Bears started playing a dangerous game. Back in August, during the final roster cuts when teams trimmed down from 90 players to 53, the Bears waived Jones. That's not unusual for UDFA players, and the hope was that he'd clear waivers and they could sign him to the practice squad. And that's exactly what happened. Jones cleared waivers, nobody claimed him, and the Bears brought him back on their practice squad where he could continue developing without taking up a valuable active roster spot. Fast forward to November 6th, and the Bears needed to make another roster move. They were activating veteran linebacker Amen Ogbongbemiga off injured reserve, a core special teams player who needed to return to the active roster. To make room, they waived Jones again, once more gambling that he'd clear waivers, and they could re-sign him to the practice squad. And once again, the gamble paid off. Jones cleared waivers, came back to the practice squad, and the Bears breathed a sigh of relief that they'd managed to keep him in the organization. Now we get to Week 14, the lead-up to our game against the Green Bay Packers. The Bears were dealing with some offensive line concerns and decided they needed to strengthen their interior line depth. They promoted guard Jordan McFadden to the active roster, which meant somebody had to go. And for the third time this season, that somebody was Carl Jones Jr. The Bears waived him from the active roster, presumably with the same plan they'd executed successfully twice before. Let him clear waivers, bring him back to the practice squad, and continue his development without losing him permanently. Except this time, the plan didn't work. This time, another team was watching. This time, the Baltimore Ravens decided they'd seen enough from Jones to take a chance on him. On Monday, December 8th, according to the NFL's official transaction wire, the Ravens claimed Jones off waivers and added him to their 53-man roster. Just like that, after all the shuffling, after all the practice squad moves, after all the development time the Bears had invested in this young linebacker, he's gone. He's now a Baltimore Raven, and the Bears have nothing to show for it. The Ravens claimed Jones to bolster their linebacker depth while dealing with injuries to Tavius Robinson and Jay Higgins IV, both currently on injured reserve. Baltimore is a championship contending team sitting at the top of the AFC, and they clearly saw value in Jones that made them willing to use a waiver claim and commit a 53-man roster spot to him. That should tell you something about the player the Bears just lost. When a team as well run as the Ravens, with their track record of identifying talent and building championship rosters, decides to claim a player off waivers, it's because they believe he can contribute. Now, some might argue that Jones wasn't a significant loss, that he was just a practice squad player who hadn't made much impact on game days. And there's some truth to that perspective. Jones's role with the Bears had been primarily on special teams, playing limited snaps and serving as emergency linebacker depth. He wasn't a starter, he wasn't getting significant defensive playing time, and his statistical impact had been minimal. But here's the thing, the Bears had invested in his development for an entire season. They'd shown enough commitment to him to bring him back twice after waiving him, and they clearly saw potential that made them want to keep him around. The question Bears fans should be asking is this: if Jones was worth keeping around through all those roster moves, if the organization valued him enough to bring him back multiple times, then why risk losing him for a third time? Why not just keep him on the practice squad permanently? Or if you need the roster flexibility, why not be more strategic about when and how you move him? The answer likely comes down to roster management complexity and the assumption that lightning wouldn't strike 3 times, that Jones would clear waivers again, just like he had before. But that assumption proved costly. The Bears got away with it twice, and they probably thought they'd get away with it again. But in the NFL, you can only push your luck so far before another team notices what you're doing and decides to take advantage. The Ravens were watching. They saw a young linebacker with developmental upside who was being shuffled around, and they pounced on the opportunity. That's smart roster management on Baltimore's part, and it's a lesson learned the hard way for Chicago. What makes this situation even more interesting is the timing and the other moves the Bears made around the same period. When they waived Jones before the Packers game, they also elevated veteran linebacker Jalen Reeves-Maybin from the practice squad to the game day roster. Reeves-Maybin is a former special teams Pro Bowler who brings experience and reliability in that phase of the game. Against Green Bay, he played 17 of the Bears' 25 special teams snaps, filling essentially the same role that Jones had been occupying. This suggests that maybe the Bears had already shifted their developmental focus away from Jones and toward other options. Maybe they decided that Reeves-Maybin, with his proven track record and experience, was a better fit for what they needed right now as a playoff contending team. Reeves-Maybin has one remaining practice squad elevation before the Bears would need to sign him to the active roster, and with starter Tremaine Edmunds eligible to return from injured reserve next week, the linebacker depth situation should improve naturally. The return of T.J. Edwards and Noah Sewell to the lineup against the Packers also factors into this equation. Both players were back from their respective absences, though the Bears held them to snap counts in their first game back. Edwards played about 62% of defensive snaps, while Sewell saw just 1 defensive snap and 10 on special teams. If both players return to full strength against the Browns this Sunday, the Bears' linebacker room will be in much better shape, reducing the need for emergency depth pieces like Jones or elevated practice squad players. But here's what the Bears should be doing now, keeping a close eye on what happens with Carl Jones Jr. in Baltimore. If he gets playing time with the Ravens, if he shows up on tape making plays, if he develops into a contributor for a championship contending team, that's going to sting. That's going to be a reminder of a player who slipped through our fingers because of roster management decisions that prioritized short-term flexibility over long-term asset retention. And if the Ravens don't end up committing to Jones long-term, if he becomes available again in the offseason, the Bears should absolutely explore a reunion. The bigger picture here is about how NFL teams manage their rosters and the risks inherent in constantly shuffling players between the active roster and practice squad. The Bears thought they could keep Jones in limbo indefinitely, moving him up and down as needed without consequences. But the reality is that every time you expose a player to waivers, you're giving 31 other teams a chance to claim him. You're broadcasting to the entire league that this player is available, and eventually someone's going to take you up on that offer. For a team like the Bears that's trying to build sustainable success, that's trying to develop young talent while remaining competitive, these kinds of losses hurt. Jones might never become a star. He might end up being just a special teams contributor or a backup linebacker, but he was our developmental piece. We invested time in him, we saw potential in him, and now another team gets to reap whatever benefits come from that development. That's not catastrophic, but it's not ideal either. As we head into Week 15's matchup against the Cleveland Browns, the Bears' linebacker situation should be stabilizing. Edmonds could return, Edwards and Sewell should be at full strength, and we'll have Reeves-Maybin available if we need additional depth. But the loss of Jones serves as a reminder that roster management is a high-stakes game where one miscalculation can cost you assets you've been developing. It's a lesson the Bears learned the hard way, and hopefully it's one that informs future decisions about how aggressively to shuffle young players with developmental upside. So here's what I want to know from all of you in the Bears faithful. Do you think losing Carl Jones Jr. is a significant blow, or was he just a replaceable practice squad player who wouldn't have made a real impact anyway? Should the Bears have been more protective of a young player they'd invested development time in, or is this just the reality of NFL roster management where you can't keep everyone? Are you confident in our linebacker depth heading into the playoff push, especially with injuries that have plagued that position group all season? And if Jones ends up succeeding in Baltimore, will you view this as a missed opportunity or just one of those things that happens in the NFL? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because I want to hear how this community feels about roster decisions that might seem minor but could have long-term implications. In conclusion, the Chicago Bears lost linebacker Carl Jones Jr. to a waiver claim by the Baltimore Ravens after trying to shuffle him between the active roster and practice squad for the third time this season. As we move forward with our playoff push, the linebacker depth should improve with returning players, but the Bears will need to keep an eye on how Jones performs in Baltimore and whether this becomes a case of a player who got away. If you want to stay updated on every roster move, every injury update, and every strategic decision the Bears make as we push toward the playoffs, you need to be subscribed to Bears News Fan Report. Hit that subscribe button right now, turn on notifications so you never miss a breaking update, and drop a like on this video if you found this analysis valuable. Comment below with your perspective on the Jones situation and our linebacker depth. Share this with every Bears fan who needs to understand what just happened with our roster, and let's build the strongest Bears community on YouTube. Bear down, and I'll see you in the next video with more exclusive coverage and in-depth analysis.